When your budgie suddenly stops singing. Do you know what they're trying to tell you? Most owners don't. At first, it seems like a small thing. Maybe they're just having a quiet day. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're not in the mood. But here's what's easy to miss. For a budgie, singing isn't just noise. It's one of the clearest signs that everything feels normal. And when that sound suddenly disappears, something has changed. The difficult part is that budgies can't explain what changed. They can't tell you they're stressed. They can't tell you they're uncomfortable. They can't tell you something feels wrong. So instead, they communicate through behavior. And silence is one of the loudest messages they can send. What's surprising is that the reason isn't always what people expect. Sometimes it's harmless. Sometimes it's emotional. And sometimes it's the first sign of a problem that owners wish they had noticed sooner. Let's start with the reason most people never think about. Point 1. Singing only happens when they feel safe. Why do budgies sing in the first place? Most people assume they're simply making sounds because they're happy. That's partly true. But there's something deeper happening. In the wild, budgies are prey animals. Everything around them is constantly being evaluated for danger. A bird that's worried about survival doesn't spend much time singing. It spends time watching, listening. Preparing to react. Singing is what happens when that constant threat detection system relaxes. That's why wild budgies are often most vocal when they feel secure within their flock. The environment feels predictable. Nothing dangerous seems nearby, and their attention can finally shift away from survival. Your budgie carries those same instincts, even inside a comfortable home. It's so when a bird that normally sings every day suddenly becomes quiet, it's often because something has interrupted that feeling of safety. Not necessarily a major threat, just enough uncertainty to make them stay alert. And once a budgie becomes alert, singing is usually one of the first behaviors to disappear. But safety isn't the only thing that affects their voice. Sometimes the change is happening inside their mind. Point 2. They may be processing something new. Have you ever moved a piece of furniture and your budgie noticed before anyone else did? Most owners underestimate how observant these little birds are. A new object, a different sound, a visitor in the house, a change in routine, things that seem insignificant to us can feel enormous to them. Budgies are creatures of habit. They love predictability. And when something changes, they often spend time studying it, watching, evaluating, trying to understand whether it's safe. During that process, many birds become noticeably quieter. Not because they're unhappy, because they're thinking. Their attention shifts away from social behaviors and toward observation. You might see them sitting still longer than usual, looking around more often, reacting to sounds they normally ignore. Eventually, once they decide everything is fine, their singing often returns. But if the silence continues, another possibility becomes more likely. And this is where many owners get caught off guard. 3. Your budgie could be feeling lonely. Budgies are among the most social birds in the world. In nature, they rarely spend significant time alone. Almost every activity happens around other birds. Eating, flying, retting. Communicating. Their lives revolve around connection. That's why singing isn't just self-expression. It's often social communication, a way of interacting with the world around them. When a budgie feels isolated, that motivation can fade. Some birds become quieter after losing a companion. Others become quiet when their favorite person suddenly becomes busy. Even changes in household schedules can have an impact. A bird that once spent hours interacting with you may suddenly find itself alone for most of the day. And sometimes the first sign isn't screaming, it's silence. The bird simply stops participating, stops calling. Stops singing, stops engaging the way it once did. The challenging part is that this withdrawal can happen gradually. So gradually that owners don't notice until the room feels strangely quiet. But loneliness isn't the only emotional reason a budgie may stop singing. Sometimes they're dealing with something far more physical. Illness often appears before obvious symptoms. Here's something every budgie owner should know. Birds are experts at hiding weakness. In the wild, appearing sick makes a bird vulnerable. Predators target the weakest individuals. Because of that, many birds instinctively conceal illness for as long as possible. This means obvious symptoms often appear later than people expect. Long before a bird looks sick, their behavior may change, their energy drops, their curiosity fades, and their singing becomes less frequent or disappears entirely. A normally vocal budgie becoming unusually quiet should never be ignored, especially if you notice other subtle changes: sleeping more, eating differently, sitting puffed up. Spending more time at the bottom of the cage. None of these automatically mean something serious is wrong, but together they can form a message your budgie has no other way to communicate. And the sooner that message is noticed, the better, because sometimes silence is not about emotions at all, it's about discomfort. And there's another surprisingly common cause that many people overlook. Their environment might be stressing. Imagine trying to relax while a loud alarm occasionally went off in the background. Eventually, your behavior would change. The same thing happens with budgies, except their senses are often far more sensitive than ours. A sound you barely notice, a flickering light, a nearby television, construction outside, even the placement of a cage. All of these things can influence how secure a bird feels. What's interesting is that budgies don't always react dramatically. Many don't panic, many don't scream. Instead, they simply become quieter. Their focus shifts toward monitoring the environment. The more attention devoted to staying alert, the less energy remains for singing. This is why some birds start vocalizing again almost immediately after a stressful factor is removed. The silence wasn't random. It was a response. And once the source disappeared, so did the need for caution. But what happens when none of these explanations seem to fit? What if your budgie stops singing even though everything appears normal? That's where the final possibility becomes important. It's sometimes they're waiting. For you, this might sound strange, but many bonded budgies develop routines centered around specific people. They learn when you wake up, when you leave, when you come home. When you normally interact with them. Over time, your presence becomes part of their daily rhythm. Some birds sing most when you're nearby. Some sing in response to your voice. Some start chirping the moment they hear your footsteps, not because they're trained, because they've connected those moments with comfort and interaction. When those interactions decrease, their behavior can change. The room may look exactly the same. The cage may be exactly the same, but from your budgie's perspective, an important part of the environment is missing. And sometimes the return of singing begins with something surprisingly simple: a conversation, a training session, a few extra minutes together, a reminder that the connection is still there. Because for many budgies, singing isn't just about happiness, it's about engagement. It's about participation. It's about feeling connected to the world around them. So what should you do if your budgie suddenly stops singing? Start by paying attention. Look for changes. Look for patterns. Look for anything that happened around the same time the silence began. Because your budgie isn't being difficult, and they're not choosing silence for no reason. They're responding to something. The question is what? Remember this. Every song your budgie sings is a sign. A sign that they feel comfortable enough to express themselves, comfortable enough to communicate, comfortable enough to let their personality shine. So when that music disappears, don't ignore it. Listen to the silence. Sometimes it's telling you more than the singing ever did. Has your budgie ever suddenly stopped singing? How long did it last, and what turned out to be the reason? Let us know below. Your experience might help another owner understand what their little bird is trying to say.